Today I am reading chapter 2 from Law and Literature for first year BA LLB syllabus by Mumbai University. We are covering chapter 2 by Henry Fielding. The book's name is Joseph Andrews. This is a dialogue between Parson Adams and Lady Booby. The law and lawyers proved to be popular butts of ridicule not only in the 19th century, as we see in the novels of Dickens, but also much earlier. In the 18th century, too, novelists were obsessed with the many defects and injustices of the law. Henry Fielding, in particular, was in an advantageous position to bring out these defects because he had some training in the law. His novel Joseph Andrews was inspired by the great success of Samuel Richardson's novel Pamela in 1740. In this later novel, written in the form of letters by Pamela, Richardson presented a picture almost to the point of absurdity of female virtue. Pamela wards off the advances of her rich employer, Mr. B, and perseveres her virginity. Later, Mr. B, won over by her chaste nature, offers her marriage even though she is merely a maid. The novel is suitably subtitled Virtue Rewarded. It sold well due to its epistolary technique and its strong moralistic note. Fielding began his novel Joseph Andrews as a burlesque because he wished to satirize Richardson's novel and present a picture of male chastity. Joseph, supposedly the brother of Pamela, is employed in the household of the recently bereaved Lady Booby, and he staunchly resists her advances and retains his virginity even though he loses his job. Mrs. Slipslop, the lady's maid, too, has designs on him and wishes to quench her lust in his arms, but Joseph stands firm as a rock. Autobiographical note: Henry Fielding was born at Somerset, England, a gentleman and an aristocrat by birth. He was educated at Eton and after studying law at Leiden came to London, where he started his writing and journalistic career. In 1740, he went back to the study of the law and was called to the bar. However, his interest in journalism continued, particularly political journalism, and he was rewarded for his labors by his political party and appointed Justice of Peace for Westminster City in 1748 and for Middlesex County in the following year. Working closely with Sir John Fielding, his half-brother, he established a system for justice and suppression of crime in London. His work, particularly with crime gangs and their detection and repression, later developed into the Allied force which is today known as Scotland Yard. He opposed public hangings, particularly for minor offences, and made a name for himself in London. After 1754, his health deteriorated and he travelled to the warmer climate of Portugal in order to recover, but he died in Lisbon in the same year. His best known novels are Joseph Andrews, Tom Jones, and Amelia. Fielding started with the intention of writing a satire on Richardson's novel Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded, but no sooner did he start the novel than his genius asserted itself. Within the first few chapters, we are introduced to the lovable but eccentric Parson Adams, who has been called one of the first great comic heroes in the English novel. It is Parson Adams who has educated Joseph and been a paternal figure to him. In fact, in fact, critics have often debated as to why the novel has not been named after this lovable parson. After Joseph's dismissal from Lady Booby's presence for disobliging her, he leaves her ladyship's estate and his adventures on the road begin. From this point on, Joseph Andrews is a picturesque or adventure novel. We are introduced to a gallery of characters as fascinating as those created by Dickens. We meet thieves, hypocrites, bullies, rogues, fools, lawyers, and of course, lascivious women. During the later part of his journey, he meets Fanny, his beloved, and Parson Adams, and there are more adventures. In keeping with his moralistic and reformatory zeal, Fielding also points out how power is misused by institutions and people with money and authority. As we follow Joseph, we get a panoramic vision of the 18th century England. The story so far: Joseph, who has persevered his chastity for his beloved Fanny, is now back in the Booby estate, accompanied by her and Parson Adams. But Lady Booby's ardour has not decreased, and she is incensed when she hears their marriage banns being announced in her church by Parson Adams. She questions Parson Adams and then summons Lawyer Scout to ascertain what is happening. Now let us read the excerpts from Book 4, chapters 2 and 3. Critical note. Note particularly Lawyer Scout's demeanour in the presence of Lady Booby and his comments on the law. Now let's begin with the chapter Joseph Andrew by Henry Fielding. We'll be covering chapter 2 and chapter 3. A dialogue between Mr. Abraham Adams and the Lady Booby. Mr. Adams was not far off, for he was drinking her ladyship's health below in a cup of her ale. He no sooner came before her than she began in the following manner. I wonder, sir, after the many great obligations you have had to this family, with all which the reader hath in the course of this history been minutely acquainted, that you will ungratefully show any respect to a fellow who hath been turned out of it for his misdeeds. Nor doth it, I can tell you, sir, become a man of your character to run about the country with an idle fellow and wench. Indeed, as for the girl, I know no harm of her. Slipslop tells me she was formerly bred up in my house, and behaved as she ought, till she hankered after this fellow, and he spoiled her. Nay, she may still perhaps do very well, if he will let her alone. You are therefore doing a monstrous thing in endeavouring to procure a match between these two people, which will be to the ruin of them both. Madam, said Adams, if your ladyship will but hear me speak, I protest I never heard any harm of Mr. Joseph Andrews. If I had, I should have corrected him for it, for I never have, nor will encourage the faults of those under my care. As for the young woman, I assure your ladyship I have as good an opinion of her as your ladyship yourself, or any other can have. She is the sweetest tempered, honestest, worthiest young creature. Indeed, as to her beauty, I do not commend her on that account, though all men allow she is the handsomest woman, gentle or simple, that ever appeared in the parish. You are very impertinent, says she, to talk such fulsome stuff to me. It is mighty becoming truly in a clergyman to trouble himself about handsome women, and you are a delicate judge of beauty, no doubt. A man who hath lived all his life in such a parish as this is a rare judge of beauty. Ridiculous! Beauty indeed! A country wench a beauty! I shall be sick whenever I hear beauty mentioned again. And so this wench is to stock the parish with beauties, I hope. But, sir, our poor is numerous enough already. I will have no more vagabonds settled here. Madam, says Adams, your ladyship is offended with me. I protest, without any reason. This couple were desirous to consummate long ago, and I dissuaded them from it. Nay, I may venture to say, I believe I was the sole cause of their delaying it. Well, says she, and you did very wisely and honestly too, notwithstanding she is the greatest beauty in the parish. And now, madam, continued he, I only perform my office to Mr. Joseph. Pray, don't Mr. such fellows to me, cries the lady. He, said the poor parson, with the consent of Fanny, before my face, put in the barns. Yes, answered the lady. I suppose the slut is forward enough. Slipslop tells me how her head runs upon fallows. That is one of her beauties, I suppose. But if they have put in the barns, I desire you will publish them no more without my orders. Madam, cries Adams, if any one puts in a sufficient caution and assigns a proper reason against them, I am willing to surcease. I tell you a reason, says she. He is a vagabond, and he shall not settle here and bring in a nest of beggars into the parish. It will make us but little amends that they will be beauties. This question had come in one of the papers where it was asked who said this and what was the circumstances. So this was said by Lady Booby to Parson Adams. Madam, answered Adams, with the utmost submission to your ladyship, I have been informed by Lawyer Scott that any person who serves a year gains a settlement in the parish where he serves. Lawyer Scout, replied the lady, is an impudent coxcomb. I will have no lawyer scout interfere with me. I repeat to you again, I will have no more encumbrances brought on us, so I desire you will proceed no further. Madam, returned Adams, I would obey your ladyship in everything that is lawful, but surely the parties being poor is no reason against their marrying. God forbid there should be any such law. The poor have little share enough of this world already. It would be barbarous, indeed, to deny them the common privileges and innocent enjoyments which nature indulges to the animal creation. Since you understand yourself no better, cries the lady, nor the respect due from such as you to a woman of my distinction, than to affront my ears by such loose discourse, I shall mention but one short word. It is my orders to you that you publish these banns no more, and if you dare, I will recommend it to your master, the doctor, to discard you from his service. I will, sir, notwithstanding your poor family, and then you and the greatest beauty in the parish may go and beg together. Madam, answered Adams. I know not what your ladyship means by the terms master and service. I am in the service of a master who will never discard me for doing my duty, and if the doctor, for indeed I have never been able to pay for a license, thinks proper to turn me from my cure, God will provide me, I hope, another. At least my family, as well as myself, have hands, and He will prosper, I doubt not, our endeavours to get our bread honestly with them. While my conscience is pure, I shall never fear what a man can do unto me. I condemn my humility, said the lady, for demeaning myself to converse with you so long. I shall take other measures, for I see you are a confederate with them. But the sooner you leave me, the better, and I shall give orders that my doors may no longer be open to you. I will suffer no parsons who run about the country with beauties to be entertained here. Madam, said Adams, I shall enter into no person's doors against their will, but I am assured when you have inquired further into this matter, you will applaud, not blame, my proceeding, and so I humbly take my leave, which he did with many bows, or at least many attempts at a bow. Chapter 3. In the afternoon the lady sent for Mr. Scout, whom she attacked most violently for intermeddling with her servants, which he denied, and indeed with truth, for he had only asserted accidentally, and perhaps rightly, that a year's service gained a settlement, and so far he owed he might have formerly informed the parson and believed it was law. I am resolved, said the lady, to have no discarded servants of mine settled here, and so, if this be your law, I shall send to another lawyer. Scout said, if she sent to 100 lawyers, not one or all of them could alter the law. The utmost that was in the power of a lawyer was to prevent the law's taking effect, and that he himself could do for her ladyship as well as any other. And I believe, says he, Madam, your ladyship, not being conversant with these matters, hath mistaken a difference, for I asserted only that a man who served a year was settled. Now there is a material difference between being settled in law and settled in fact, and as I affirmed generally, he was settled, and law is preferable to fact. My settlement must be understood in law and not in fact. And suppose, madam, we admit he was settled in law, what use will they make of it? How doth that relate to fact? He is not settled in fact, and if he be not settled in fact, he is not an inhabitant, and if he is not an inhabitant, he is not of this parish, and then undoubtedly he ought not to be published here, for Mr. Adams hath told me your ladyship's pleasure, and the reason, which is a very good one, to prevent burdening us with the poor. We have too many already, and I think we ought to have an act to hang or transport half of them. If we can prove in evidence that he is not settled in fact, it is another matter. What I said to Mr. Adams was on a supposition that he was settled in fact, and indeed, if that was the case, I should doubt. Don't tell me your facts and your ifs, said the lady. I don't understand your gibberish. You take too much upon you, and are very impertinent in pretending to direct in this parish, and you shall be taught better. I assure you, you shall. But as to the wench, I am resolved she shall not settle here. I will not suffer such beauties as these to produce children for us to keep. Beauties, indeed, your ladyship is pleased to be merry, answered Scout. Mr. Adams described her so to me, said the lady. Pray, what sort of dowdy is it, Mr. Scout? The ugliest creature almost I ever beheld. A poor dirty drab. Your ladyship never saw such a wretch. Well, but, dear Mr. Scout, let her be what she will. These ugly women will bring children, you know, so that we must prevent the marriage. True, madam, replied Scout, for the subsequent marriage cooperating with the law will carry law into fact. When a man is married, he is settled in fact, and then he is not removable. I will see Mr. Adams, and I make no doubt of prevailing with him. His only objection is, doubtless, that he shall lose his fee. But that being once made easy, as it shall be, I am confident no further objection will remain. No, no, it is impossible, but your ladyship can't discommend him his unwillingness to depart from his fee. Every man ought to have a proper value for his fee. As to the matter in question, if your ladyship pleases to employ me in it, I will venture to promise you success. The laws of this land are not so vulgar to permit a mean fellow to contend with one of your ladyship's fortune. We have one sure card, which is to carry him before Justice Frolic, who upon hearing your ladyship's name will commit him without any further questions. As for the dirty slut, we shall have nothing to do with her, for if we get rid of the fellow, the ugly jade will. Take what measures you please, good Mr. Scout, answered the lady, but I wish you could rid the parish of both, for Slipslop tells me such stories of this wench that I abhor the thoughts of her, and though you say she is such an ugly slut, yet you know, dear Mr. Scout, these forward creatures who run after men will always find some as forward as themselves, so that to prevent the increase of beggars we must get rid of her. Your ladyship is very much in the right, answered Scout, but I am afraid the law is a little deficient in giving us any such power of prevention. However, the justice will stretch it as far as he is able to oblige your ladyship. To say truth, it is a great blessing to the country that he is in the commission, for he hath taken several poor off our hands that the law would never lay hold on. I know some justices who think as much of committing a man to Bridewell as his lordship at size would of hanging him, but it would do a man good to see his worship or justice, our justice, commit a fellow to Bridewell. He takes so much pleasure in it, and when once we have them there, we seldom hear any more of them. He is either starved or eaten up by vermin in a month's time. Here the arrival of a visitor put an end to the conversation, and Mr. Scout, having undertaken the cause and promised its success, departed. The Scout was one of those fellows who, without any knowledge of the law, or being bred to it, take upon them, in defiance of an Act of Parliament, to act as lawyers in the country, and are called so. They are the pests of society, and a scandal to a profession to which indeed they do not belong, and which owes to such kind of rascallions the ill will which weak persons bear towards it. With this fellow, to whom a little before she would not have condescended to have spoken, did a certain passion for Joeph, and the jealousy and the disdain of poor innocent Fanny, betray the Lady Booby into a familiar discourse, in which she inadvertently confirmed many hints with which Slipslop, whose gallant he was, had pre-acquainted him, and whence he had taken an opportunity to assert those severe falsehoods of little Fanny, which possibly the reader might not have been well able to account for if he had not thought proper to give him this information. With this, we end chapter 2, Joseph Andrews, by Henry Fielding. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. Bye bye.